And I'm still continuing with our conversation here with Seth Mazibuko, our apartheid-era youth activist, who's still a youth, actually, on the Mandela celebrations and the Mandela centenary. We were talking about the fact that, Mandela's almost portrayed as just a saint who just went into prison, came out and preached love, but there was so much more that went into the liberation movement, and so many other people who were involved in the struggle for freedom. Yesterday, of course, a former president of the U.S., Barack Obama, stood up and gave it, of course, a beautiful speech, as he always does, give beautiful speeches. From your assessment of the speech, I know you were there taking notes. What did you feel might have perhaps been a fundamental issues that may have been perhaps missing from that speech? It was a long, beautiful speech, yes, but I know that there are some issues there that could have been dealt with regards to Mandela's history and legacy.
Yep. And again, I'll be set to be maybe not too good on this one, because I don't become so comfortable. I always look at who's saying what. And when you say it, when I know who you are, then I'm able to even place your speech before you can even start, narrating it. But one thing that I liked yesterday, let me start with what I liked with Obama. He came out to show how the powerful can actually use powerful politicians can use their power using democracy. A lot of people are saying he referred this too much to Trump, but that has a reference even to us, that we come from an era of politicians that can use their power to even, and use democracy, to even divide and still oppress the poor. And most of these people are people that will also be coming from the history of poverty, from the history of being oppressed, but turn around and use that. And thanks that, for instance, Tatu Mandela, never walked that path. But what is important that also I was uncomfortable with is that some of these things that had to be said, I'm going back, some of these things that had to be said about Mandela were not there. I mean, to me, I was listening to a young African man called Obama, coming to reconcile, with his Africanness, came from Kenya, then he came to South Africa. So to me, this is my project, of young African children that needed to be told to be African, and to be African is only to be told to do good. We simply, the Obamas will prescribe, in their foundations and all. This is how young people should behave. And when they're African people, they come from dust to diamond. So I'm the example of as Obama, from dust to diamond. But the point I'm making is that we are purporting Africa, and I'm happy that ANC has become very African. And I must give that as a because that, to me, we've been losing. We're losing this African voice, this African values, this African upbringing, this African contextualization of things. To me, I lacked the Africanization of Mandela. Yes. Again, I'm a Mona. I like to scratch some of these things that are hidden. Yes. And whenever I commentate, people say, don't leave that crack. don't deal with that crack. We will deal with it. But I would like to confront it, because it then, in the generations that we're building, it hides the real. A friend of mine, a lady friend of mine, again, Sibongile Mthembu, Mrs. Mkhabela now, Mandela Children's Fund, said something very interesting. He said, in this country, we have not yet defined the nation we want to build. We can talk nation building. We haven't defined. Give me NDP, put it aside. NDP, put it aside. But a child that comes from South Africa, being an adult, what kind of a child do we want out there?
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of an adult do we want to produce from the kids that we're producing, from their youth? And that is why they're so scattered.
Yes.
Now, are we wanting to produce a Mandela? Are we wanting to produce a Sobukwe? Are we wanting to produce a Sisulu? Are we wanting to produce, there's one name I wanted to call again that I missed. Are we wanting to produce a soft-hearted, hallelujah, hi, I'm okay? Oh, what is it? And to me, we should be using the Mandelas, the Mama Sisulus, the Sobukwes, the Winnie Mandelas. We should be building these values. You know, I liked also what Mandela said at some time. That speaks to also what Biko said before. Biko spoke about the attitude of mind, and spoke about the dealing with the mind. Mandela said something about the RDP of the soul. You know what I mean? To me, I'd like to see scholars even connecting that to this ideal South Africa that we want, say ideal young person that we want, so that when we look at Mandela, I'm sorry people who say I'm attacking Santin again. When we look at Mandela, we shouldn't just be looking at Mandela as that big statue in Santin Square. Yeah. You know, we should be looking at Mandela, the values. Let me now, the speech by Barack Obama touched on issues of values, for instance, in leadership. But he used less of Mandela's values to explain that leadership. Touched on corruption, you know. And when he talked about corruption, he was meaning less of what Mandela would have fought against here, but was meaning more of what is the current president's name?
Cyril Ramaphosa.
Yeah, really, you know, we need to be starting to, I wish South Africa should use its icons, you know, truly, and reflect on these icons. One man who's also disappearing now lately, who comes from the camp, Mandela camp, is Chris Hani.
Yeah.
Why are we hiding Chris Hani? He is not a hallelujah, hey Obama, hey speeches. No. We hide Chris Hani because he touched wood. He touched issues of poverty.
Yes.
He didn't put an overall, you know, and then go and open a school.
But while we, you know, we can criticize, you know, some of, you know, the perception of Nelson Mandela now and the narrative that's been pushed about, you know, Nelson Mandela at the moment, you know, sometimes I'll listen to people saying that Nelson Mandela was a sellout and, you know, black people aren't necessarily where they should be. But, you know, as someone yourself who spent time in jail, someone who was arrested and was a victim of that vile police brutality at the time, we cannot downplay the fact that someone like Nelson Mandela took 27 years out of his life, which he didn't have to do. He could have enjoyed himself as a lawyer with his beautiful wife and his children and carried on as per normal. The fact that this man sacrificed himself and went to prison for those long years should never really be downplayed. Am I correct in saying that?
It's so true. But let me put a proviso on that one.
Yeah.
You know, when you're a revolutionary, that is why I say the revolutionary side of Mandela is being hidden. You expect that you won't be getting the goodies all the time.
Yes.
I mean, you expect that you won't be getting some of the good things you did can be demonized, terribly demonized. And they can even sit even in your family. Mandela's family, you know, there's a narrative that is coming out that says, if Mandela didn't go for 27 years, he might have been still with Mama Winnie, he might have been still with his kids, he might have been with them. And for that, you know, Mandela lost out on so many things in the 27 years.
Yes.
There are many others, you know, that lost out also. But immediately when Mandela placed himself on the platform of revolution and on the platform of politics, he would have taken the criticism that is being put on him about having sold out. Yeah. He would have taken it and be able to defend it. But unfortunately, it happens where he cannot speak anymore. But his comrades, because he said, he was not doing this alone. His comrades are not as vocal as to defend him as they are supposed to be on that part. What were the conditions that we needed at the time? Some form of a RDP. People were angry. I was one of them. I mean, I lost the days of my youth. I was big and angry. I would have, look, when I picked up the stone in 1976, I picked up the stone as a bullet, not just as I was protecting my country. But the point is, the way negotiations went in 1994, you understand, there was no other way that would have went. They had to go through that way, so that, I liked what I think it's Bishop Mpumlwane said this morning in one of the radio station. He said, that was opening of the door for freedom.
Yes.
Then, when you are inside, then you can then start freedoms
I think that's where we'll leave it. I wish I had more time with you, Seth. It's always a pleasure having you here in studio with us.
Let me say this, please. Go out there in 67 minutes, and I will do mine also.
Oh, I certainly will. Thank you so very much, Seth Mazibuko. Always a pleasure having you in